Do you do serious face? I can't do. You guys always do serious face, and I can't do that. Stop.
What's up? Welcome back to Smoke Break, and right now we have a very special guest. My colleague Mitchell isn't here today, but we have someone even better. We have Sydney Hedrick. You might see her on the podcast once in a while. She's a doctor, she's a mother, she's a fighter, she's a rock climber, some prevention work, a little bit of both. What do you got going on?
Lots of stuff. Always looking for ways to help people make healthier choices.
This episode of Smoke Break is extra special because we're not just targeting tobacco and nicotine. Right now, we're getting updated trends on how drugs are being used by teens.
And the results are actually shocking.
Plus, we're showing you a whole different resource you could use to quitting nicotine.
And finally, a new marijuana order seeks to make research easier. That and more on Smoke Break.
So a new survey came out talking about what trends we're seeing with teens using drugs. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
There's something called the Monitoring the Future survey, and it asks students in grades 8, 10, and 12th grades what is their experience with substance use. And the survey's been going for several years, and what we're actually seeing is that use among most substances, particularly alcohol, marijuana or cannabis, and nicotine, those are kind of the three big ones that are usually trending, is low. Something to note too that was interesting was that during COVID, so 2020 to 2021, research saw a sharp decline in use among all of these substances. And it was really attributed to, well, kids are staying inside, maybe they have more parental monitoring, and surely less access and peer pressure because they're not socializing with their friends. So what they expected was that those rates might rise, following COVID. But what happened is that actually they ended up staying low, and we're seeing rates continue to drop even years post-COVID.
Is this sharp decline a big deal for high school students?
Yes, it can be, because high school is a time where experimentation can be high. This can be due to peer pressure or kind of the perceived social norms that lots of kids are using substances. Because that norm really is not around substance use, it's really more about abstaining, that can encourage teens also not to use, right? That makes them part of the in crowd, to say, if they're not using substances. This is also important because teen brains are still developing, right? And when we use substances early, it can impact our memory and decision making and really mental health issues, which we know are at an all-time high with our young people.
Is there a reason why you think these trends are slowing down and dropping?
I think there's better awareness of harms. Prevention and public health is working, right? And I also think there's a lot of positive influence through social media as well. There can be people who trend that say, addiction is harmful, we recognize this, and we want to promote recovery and abstinence in young people. So I think peer pressure, when you think about it, typically is thought in a negative way, but there could actually be positive peer pressure too. If you have those influential people who are saying, no, we don't want to use, and not using is going to be healthier for ourselves in the long run.
It's almost like you're saying we're good at our jobs.
Prevention is working, right? Prevention and public health definitely are making positive impacts. In really the last 20, 50 years, trends have been going down for a while.
A big question for me is, are there any substances we should be keeping an eye on right now for our kids?
Yeah, I would say nicotine use continues to be a problem. We know that vaping, even though in recent years rates have gone down, it's still a significant problem. And they're always making new products that are high in nicotine. One of the newer products are the nicotine pouches, like Zen. And teens are catching on, and they're using these substances, and they can be extremely addictive. So while some substance use is going down or it's staying steady in the low percentages, we are seeing some of these kind of newer ways of consuming nicotine, in this case, that is actually kind of on the rise in recent years.
So what should parents in Oregon take away from this?
I think parents in Oregon, and really parents everywhere, because I think this is a national trend, is that most teens aren't using. And if you can help your child or your teen understand this, they're going to feel less social pressure to use as well. It's also important to keep that communication open between parent and child. Having open communication and a strong support system from caregivers is one of the strongest protective factors that a child can have, meaning that they're less likely to engage in risky behavior like drug use. Additionally, you can do other things to protect your children, like limiting access to substances in the home, modeling healthy behavior, and even providing or teaching like positive coping skills. What is the reason that our teens are using? Lots of times it's stress. And if you can find them healthier outlets, they're less likely to engage in that substance use.
Well, it sounds like that's a little bit of some good news.
That is good news, absolutely. And we can play a positive role in our youth's decisions.
You've been alluding to it, but I heard that there might be an extra way people can use to help quit nicotine.
Consider the device that's in your pocket every day.
Are you talking about my pocket camera?
No, I'm not.
So it must be a phone.
Yeah, our phone contains apps, right? And nowadays there are a lot of quit smoking apps that can support people in their recovery journey.
So what do these apps actually do?
They use a lot of the same tools that like traditional in-person counseling or therapy might use. Cognitive behavioral therapy is one of the like evidence-based terms, but basically what they do is they're trying to help you identify your reasons for use or your triggers in your environment, and then supporting you in identifying those and changing your behavior to something more positive rather than going towards smoking or vaping or whatever nicotine product you typically engage in.
So how do you determine if an app is just fluff or if it's actually helpful?
So the ones that are going to be most effective are going to use evidence-based strategies like this cognitive behavioral therapy. They're typically backed by universities or public health agencies so that know and have done research to show that they work. Things you want to look out for are ones that are going to say, miraculous recovery, right? Can reduce cravings in 1 week or something, because that's not realistic. So something that looks unrealistic, or maybe if they're charging really high fees, that could be a red flag. But ultimately they can be useful, and for the right person, it might just reduce the barrier that keeps someone from going to like an in-person treatment or counseling session.
So it's worth saying that if you're considering downloading or buying one of these apps, you should do research and also probably talk to your doctor about what they recommend.
Yeah, talk to your doctor. Some people might try to use these apps as like a replacement for in-person therapy or counseling. And best practice is probably really to use it as an addition to or a supportive tool. Still talk to your doctor, have this conversation about your goals, and even use the tool with your doctor. Create your goals with your doctor, put those goals within the app itself, and really use the app as like a day-to-day boost, a day-to-day reminder. These are your goals. Let's keep going to your goals. It sends you reminders of the successes that have happened and even other things like savings.
Well, it sounds like a double good story here.
All the good.
And now, the final round. Marijuana being reclassified. Sydney, what does that mean?
Marijuana classifications actually come from the Controlled Substances Act of 1970. And so what that act tells us, or what it did, was categorize substances based on their abuse or misuse potential, and also whether they have some sort of accepted medical use. So based on that, and usually this comes from research, right? Drugs are put in these categories saying, Schedule 1, really not safe, no medical use, down to Schedule 5, where it's like, we have to look out for them, right? Because they're still a scheduled drug, but they're safer than the others and there's a little bit less risk. When it comes to rescheduling marijuana, this isn't necessarily a new topic, right? It's been brought up in government before. It's just kind of a hot topic right now because it's getting an expedited push to be rescheduled to a Schedule 3 Currently, marijuana is a Schedule 1, right? So again, that's that highest risk, highest potential for abuse, and no medical use. Well, what's happening in Oregon even? What's happening in other states? There's lots of medical marijuana use, right, at the state level.
Right.
Even though federally it's not recognized. So this kind of federal push, what it says is we're telling people marijuana really isn't as harmful, or their risk of abuse isn't as high as we once thought. And there might actually be some medical use that we want to learn about.
So why was marijuana even classified to begin with?
Well, it was put in that Schedule 1 when the Controlled Substances Act was made. And at that time, there was not a lot of research done on marijuana, and there was a lot of thought that the abuse potential is high, right? That's why it was put in Schedule 1. Well, putting it in Schedule 1 actually limited a lot of the research. It comes with federal regulations, and therefore, ever since, we have kind of a lack of knowledge on what is the abuse potential, first of all, and then could there be medical use? So it's been put there, and it's kind of been limited on, the knowledge gained since then.
So it sounds like reclassifying it will give researchers a whole new area to work with.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the main motivations for reclassifying it. As we talked about, right, more and more states are saying that medical marijuana, there are uses for it. It's just, again, there's really not been a lot of research done. So by reclassifying it to a Schedule 3, it kind of opens up, reduces some of the federal regulations for researchers, allows them to, study marijuana on a deeper level. What could it be used for medically? What would the proper dosing look like? What are the side effects look like? And really provides a lot more information on what could be the uses, but also what are the real harms based on how we're using this substance.
So besides research, how could this impact our communities?
So this is a good question, because from a public health perspective, it's kind of a catch-22. We are based in science, right? So we want that extra research to learn about marijuana's effects. And knowing more about marijuana's effects is going to help us do more effective prevention, right? But what are some other kind of maybe like consequences that we're a little worried about? Well, when you reschedule a substance to say it's essentially less harmful than you thought, the message goes out to the community that this drug is less harmful. And when a drug is less harmful, more people engage in use, and even among our youth. So we know marijuana can be harmful, right? But this might actually increase the chance that someone will use, because at the federal level, we're saying, maybe it's not as bad as we thought. And it might open up some people's minds about originally it's not safe to maybe it is okay to use now.
Sounds like it could potentially be a double-edged sword right there.
Exactly. And there's other factors too. So when you think about the business side, right now for, local dispensaries for medical marijuana, they have a large federal tax that they're put on their business. And with the rescheduling and saying, there might be medical potential, that tax could be reduced or even removed from those businesses, and therefore their overall net profit, their income is going to go up, which they can use to support other aspects of their business, potentially even expand. And ultimately that again might increase access to communities and increase that perception that it's not that harmful and allow more people to access it. So there's definitely some concerns from the public health side, positives, right, with the research increasing and knowing more. But we definitely are concerned about what that says to communities and especially what does that say to our youth.
It sounds to me like this might be a triple good smoke break episode.
Possibly triple good, but also a little concerning on that third one.
So that's going to wrap it for this episode of Smoke Break. All the articles are going to be linked below if you want to read them yourselves. Until then, we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
All right.
Did I do it right?